Hello and welcome to the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Dina Tibbs. And Dina is the owner of Maven and Sage Consulting and a writer at her publication, Maven's Nest. She has an extensive background in transformational group facilitation, guiding people towards why their soul is here on the planet, and as a coach, mentor, and soul companion. In addition, she has 30 years of experience in business strategy, systems analysis, and curriculum design. She assists leaders at all levels to bring the heart and soul back into their personal lives and their work. She guides professionals and young emerging leaders toward understanding how the different facets of their lives are interwoven and not compartmentalized. She believes this is how we as a society create more soulful systems and structures that actually serve us in all aspects of our lives. So welcome to the show, Dina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you. We've been trying to get this going for a while, so I'm very excited to have you on, and it's a new year. So all of the things that I just talked about, like just expansion, and this is going to absolutely be a fabulous episode. I'm so excited.
Me too. I mean, I remember going for a walk with you and talking about you getting ready to do this. So that's how long we've been kind of dancing with getting on here. So yay.
Yeah, because we kind of have a similar path. You were a little bit before me in your diagnosis. So you actually helped me some when I was going through mine from your experience. So we're kind of on a similar path. You're just a little bit further ahead of me.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and that further ahead, that's relative, right?
Well,
Further
you're
ahead in the
on a linear
diagnosis.
on a linear scale. You're further
ahead.
ahead. You're a lot further ahead of me spiritually, but we'll go. That's still very much a work in progress for me.
Oh, me too. According to my husband, especially, he just informed me.
All right. Well, let's dive in because I really want to get into all of this metaphysical stuff and the stuff that you do now. But let's get started with, how long ago were you diagnosed? What was going on in your life? Tell me a little bit about like that period when you received your diagnosis.
Well, it was interesting. So it was summer of 2021. So some people might feel like we were in the midst of the COVID here in Colorado. We were kind of emerging. We weren't locked down here for sure. But people were still taking care in hospitals, and the vaccine was just coming out, et cetera. So it was summer of 21. And I had been experiencing, I hadn't gone to my OB for a while, and there was no real reason to. I was experiencing some, what I would call perimenopausal symptoms. So went to my OB, who is pretty holistic. And I knew she did the hormone pellets. And so I went to her in seek of some relief from pretty minor symptoms, really. And she's like, well, okay, I'll run your blood to see what's happening. And, running blood to look at where you are in your cycle is so relative and,
Right.
isn't the big picture. It's a snapshot in a very finite time.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, I'm not giving you any hormones till you march downstairs and get a mammogram. So that's what happened. And that's how I got a very early diagnosis, long story short in all of that. So it was because I had a low libido and my hair was, thinning, coming out in the shower, that by the grace of whatever your divine is, I got that early diagnosis. So that's
Wow. So very interesting. And I've heard from multiple people who weren't really having any symptoms, any cancer symptoms. It was just a fluke or it was something else going on. And it's like, oh, hey, let's go and do this, or we need to do this first. And then boom, there it was.
Right. I had no lump. I mean, it was so small and based on location, there was no real, you couldn't feel a lump. This is something thermography probably wouldn't have caught because it didn't even throw off a heat signature. Very likely would not have. And, there's a lot of people who promote the bioidentical hormones, pellets, all those other things. And it's my belief that not all of them are sending their patients off for mammograms before they give them to them.
I'm on the pellets, and I was never sent for a mammogram before I started taking them.
I kind of knew that in the back of my mind, even before having any idea I had cancer, number one, but also to know, yeah, I'm going to my OB because she knows her stuff. Um, and so she's got she rides that. I'm a both and pragmatist when it comes to holistic and science and all the things. And so is she. And so it would not have been caught had I just said to somebody, hey, I'm dealing with this, give me some pellets. And they would have, and that would have been the end of it. And maybe I would have gone for a mammogram at some point because I was well overdue with insurance changes and everything else. I just hadn't gone like 6, 7 years. So I was turning 50 that year. Yep, turning 50 that year.
Okay.
So I'm not sure when I would have went. I am sure it would have been later, and
Yeah.
I could have been in a much different situation.
So
Uh,
by the grace of God or whoever you follow, it all
yep,
worked out perfectly.
yep.
So I guess kind of what was your, because knowing you on a personal basis, so kind of what was your reaction to the whole thing? Were you, oh my God, and the tears and holy crap, or were you like, all right, let's get this done, let's get this over with, I got life to live, or kind of a little bit of both?
I would say a little bit of both. What was funny is you asked what was going on in my life at the time. And at the time, well, and those who don't know me, but you do know, I am always studying something, and it's, whether it's like how to play the drums or a spiritual path or, whatever it is. And so I was embarking upon a path of study that really was going to require me to be what they called and what I called at the time semi-monastic. Like I was really planning to go inward. And this was leading up to this. And so I was like, oh, well, here it is, because who knows, would I have listened to that wisdom of, yeah, let's just not work and let's not be out in the world doing a whole bunch of things, but let's be semi-monastic. I'm not sure I would have. I know myself enough to know that I also love to be out there as much. So part of it was like, okay, I guess I got it. Like, here it is. I'm going to have no choice but to be semi-monastic for this period of time. And it was a both and for sure. I mean, we all get the news and it's like worst case scenario, even, you know, and I'm sure every guest and every person you've talked to, and yourself included, always says the worst part is the guessing game between when you get the very first phone call that there's something weird on your mammogram up until knowing exactly what your treatment path is going to be. A lot of unknowns. You're learning an entire new language. Most of us who, if we didn't know someone close to us in the last, say, 5, 10 years with breast cancer, then we really kind of are conditioned to think, oh my gosh, it's either a death sentence or I'm getting a double, a double mastectomy, or
I'm
all
gonna
my
lose
hair
all
is
my
going to fall
hair.
out. Those are the things, because
Yeah.
we're not really educated unless you go through it on what the different types of cancers. Cancer really shows up in every single body in a different way, in a different fashion, and how it behaves, etc. So yes, there was the shock, there was the crying, of course, there was the fear, and then there was the acceptance, and again, that's day to day, moment to moment, over months period of time. But the long and the short of it was, yeah. And then there were days that said, okay, what if those things happen? Because I hadn't known yet. I was still in the midst of getting the full diagnosis and biopsies and everything else. Um, what if I die? Let's face my death.
Wow,
And
you went there.
I went there. Of course, I
Wow.
went there. When I roll
Not,
that
not
way,
everybody does, believe me.
I mean, in the Buddhist practice, they have a practice called "die before you die," and Buddhist monks literally walk their day to day lives saying, in a mantra, like, "What if this might be the last time I'm brushing my teeth. This might be the last time I'm doing these dishes. This might be." So I'm not a Buddhist, but I have studied it to some degree, and so I was like, okay, we're gonna. And also I work in the cycles. Spiritually in the cycles of death and rebirth. So in this case, I was like, okay, put your money where your mouth is. Do you really believe our souls are everlasting? And do you feel like your soul did what it came here in this lifetime to do? Of course, the answer is no. I have so much more I want to do. But it's okay. Like, what, yeah, I went there. Let's just put it that way. I went there. And what it taught me, of course, is what's really important.
Right. My dad passed away when I was young. I was in my early 20s when he passed away, and it was, absolutely devastating for me. And somebody recommended the book. I don't know if you've ever read it, Many Lives, Many Masters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and for those who haven't read it, like, I highly recommend it, regardless of your spiritual or religious beliefs. It's a very interesting way of looking at life and death. And a big piece of the book was that when our purpose for this lifetime has been served, it's time to move on. And whether you believe in reincarnation or not, like, it doesn't really matter. And you take what I haven't read the book in over 30 years. I should probably go back and read it again. But I do remember that piece, just, it gave me such peace about my dad leaving, because, like, okay, he must have fulfilled his purpose this time around, and it was time for him to move on. I mean, the sadness and the grief and everything was still there, but there was that peace of dealing with that. And it sounds kind of, that you mentioned that, like, has my purpose been filled? Whether or not there's more you want to do, it may be like, hey, this is what you were supposed
Well,
to do this time around.
exactly. And we will never know. I mean, some
Sure.
people, I guess, are talented enough to go back to their past lives, or their soul emerging into this one. I don't, know how much of that I buy that people can really do, but we create our own stories off of it. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I believe that. And, going back to the Buddhists, they do believe in reincarnation.
Yep.
Well, the sages take, many of them, the ultimate goal supposedly is you reincarnate until you reach the state of nirvana, and then you don't
Mhm.
come back. Well, some of us, and I'm convinced that maybe I was one of those people, because sometimes I ask, please don't send me back, like, I'm done with this rodeo. But there's just, because people, um but there's what they call the bodhisattva vow. And that is taking the vow to keep coming back to help humanity heal and move along.
I don't know if I'd want to do that.
Well, that's what I said. So I joke. I'm like, if I did take that one, can I take the vow
Can I
back?
take it
Really?
back?
Can I take it back? Because I don't know. These people don't seem to be moving forward very quickly, and I don't have that much patience. Um, but yeah, so that was kind of where I was. And, I also think and again, I do think it's regardless of what religion, but we just do a really crappy job of working with death and grief in this
Absolutely.
society. And so I'd like to think I think about that differently, and always have. So I think I approached this whole situation differently. And you talked about you losing your dad young, and I would sit and think about, like, what part of my son's, or even my husband, or whoever my loved ones, but I was honing in on son. What part of his soul was meant to experience a mother going through cancer?
Mm,
Right? Because
right.
that's a thing too. Or in your case, what part of your soul was meant to experience the loss of a parent so young?
Yeah. And how did your son react to all of this?
He's one of those he's a lot like his dad. And I always say that's gonna, he's very even toned, and always has been as a child. Um, so he was there for me. He, wore his pink t-shirts to school those months, but then he'll joke with me about it, like, because I like astrology and stuff like that too. Everyone who lives in my house, so my mother, son, and husband, are all cancers. Um,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I am, yeah, and I'm a Virgo, so, but I'm an Aquarius rising, so I can dance with them, but they're all kind of one way. I tell them they're all stubborn, but they're very nurturing. Um, I'm open-minded, but I'm very in your face where they're not. And so it's an interesting dance for me to be that. But he's so funny. He'll go, if we're standing, like, happen to be standing all together, he'll go, cancer, cancer, cancer. And then he'll point at me and he'll go, cancer.
It's a different
So
kind, but you're in the club now.
you're in the club, exactly. So, I mean, that's how he handled it. He wrote about it, I think, in those days, in a couple of essays and stuff like that. But I mean, I think, all joking aside, I took it as an opportunity to really be with the death process and what that might look like for me and that sort of thing. And at the same time, once I did know the path and the way the cancer was behaving, et cetera, I knew that, this is 99% curable. I am blessed and grace. And this whole thing came with grace. I mean, there are times where I'm like, I shouldn't even be talking about cancer because so many people have dealt with, it much more
Mhm.
just, within a short period of time. One of my close friends lost her daughter to brain cancer and then her husband to pancreatic within a year of each other. Um, and she's like, you didn't even tell me you had cancer. I said, because you have like way more to worry about than I do. So, so I do talk about, yes, I faced the death. And at the same time, once I knew the path I was going down, I knew that, the cure rate was up at 99%. So, I didn't need a lot of caregiving or, just based on the protocols and that kind of thing. So, it was almost peripheral, I think, for my son in a lot of ways.
Gotcha. So tell us a little bit more. You've been talking about it, but for those who, don't really understand it,
Mm-hmm.
take us a little bit more on what the experience is to, experience your death or however you described it, or to face death.
Well, I think about when, I certainly do meditations that are revolved around, kind of just being in the dark, and not in the dark bad way, but in the cosmos, if you will, in the void is a good way to put it. And for me, this is just a thing, but for me, sound healing, going to gong baths, all that's kind of big and mainstream right now, but I've been
Mhm.
involved in doing that for years and years. And when I'm when someone else is doing the gongs and I'm there as the participant, I almost always get taken to that place. Like I'm like up with the constellations. Or super ancient, like, with our predecessors and the hominids, and like that's just where I go for
Okay.
some reason. And but really it's kind of like it's always that process of of curiosity and wonder, but kind of going back to the soul and saying, okay, I lived out what it was meant to do here now on this planet. How conscious is the soul of, oh, lost these people, I left these people, I'm not the same sort of ego personality meat suit that I was before. Those are just interesting questions to unanswerable questions to ponder. um, but I think, what it came down to was like, if I die tomorrow, like this personality, bodysuit, meat suit's not going to know the difference.
Okay.
I think and this is true for whether it's cancer or anything else, things that I've experienced sitting in circle with women, and, how we hold ourselves back or let external stories and people tell us how we should be doing our lives. Um, and it's come up, and I've asked the question point blank of a lot of the women that I spend very deep amounts of time with in this type of space. And it's like, are you more afraid of living or dying?
Ooh, that's a powerful question. It
It
seems
is a
very
power.
easy, but it's very powerful when you really look at it.
Mm-hmm. And that's so through facing the dying head on, maybe not realistically in this body, but head on in my consciousness, in my emotional body, in my meditation practices and states, it says, well, no, the answer to that question is, um, I think we're all more afraid to live who we are fully.
Mm.
The dying part's easy. And then the secondary piece is, are we really afraid of the dying process, or are we afraid of the suffering leading up to it? And again, that's also a yes.
Yeah. Well, and not afraid of who we're going to leave behind and how they're going to
Sure.
survive or cope if we're
Mm-hmm.
gone, I think is a piece of the fear of dying as well.
Absolutely. And then that's where I kind of checked in with my ego self too and said, yes, they will have their grief process, but it's like, the whole idea, do people need me? And this might sound terrible, but I sat with that and I said, yes, emotionally, I'm sure, but they'll be fine with, I mean, it's kind of like, you're not that great, Dina. Like life will go on, right?
I
My
think
son,
your
my husband,
husband and son would probably disagree with that, but
although Jason always jokes with me. He just did it the other day because I have my moments and my moods, and he said something like, "The world doesn't revolve around you, Dina." And I said, "Well, yes, it does. And the sooner you figure it out, the easier life is going to be for you."
happy wife, happy life.
Exactly. But I mean, and that's also coming back to humor and being able to not spiritually bypass it through humor, but joke about these experiences we all go through, whether it's again this or I always say life is a cosmic joke. The sooner we figure that it's in the mystery and it's kind of a cosmic joke, and humanity has been here before, it has seen what's going on in the collective, in the zeitgeist. We've all been here before, particularly if you do believe your soul keeps coming back in. It's like, oh yeah, I recognize this one. And it's kind of, I believe, like how we know how to walk through it and how to know what to do, because unconsciously we probably have been through it before. So that's how I worked through it, I guess. I don't know, that's even a statement. It's like, yeah, I don't know that you can go around or over any other way but through it.
You got to go through. Yeah. Yeah. It's so there is a woman that she passed away a couple of years ago that I love, and she called herself a humorist. So she wasn't necessarily a public speaker, she wasn't a comedian. Her name was Jeannie Robertson, and she called herself a humorist.
Mm-hmm.
And she always liked to say that you can find humor in any situation if you're looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, don't take life so seriously. Nobody gets out alive.
Right.
And to just, and it's very hard when you're going through chemo or, losing your breasts or something like that. It's very hard to find the humor in that situation. But, we're all meant to laugh. And, what do they say? Kids laugh and smile 300 times a day, and adults like 6,
Right.
so.
Well, that's because we don't play either. And
Right.
that's, and it's funny because even when I was going for the, the further diagnostic mammograms and so on, I'd be the jokester down there at Adventist Breast Care Center. And some of the radiology techs would just be there, right there with me. And a few of them they were so stoic. And like, one of them even said, like, I was doing the strike a pose and singing Vogue by Madonna and dancing my way in there. And, she actually kind of got very like, this is very serious. And I said, well, this is me. You're not here getting the mammogram. So actually, what other reaction am I supposed to have other than making the best of this and bringing humor? Like you said, not just joking to bypass. And, yeah, there's probably a touch of that, I think, for me. I'm one to start making jokes if I
Offset an
really,
uncomfortable
yeah,
situation, making a joke
exactly.
kind of thing. Yeah.
But, so that is, I mean, humorous. I love that. I like to think some of my writing takes on that more humorist, essayist type of style as well. I say I want to be Betty White when I grow up. And somebody the other day said, well, she's dead, right? I said, yeah, none of us are making it out of here alive. Are you telling me
She was
have
99. I
you
mean,
don't
come
have any
on.
inspirations that have walked off the mortal coil yet? Like, I was like, why was that a response to say? I'm like, yeah, I know
If
she's
I can
dead.
live to 99 and still be, as alive as she was until then, that's the whole point,
Yeah,
right?
and funny, and yet tough. I
Yep.
mean, she was a feminist, an animal lover, beyond belief. So I'm like, yeah, I want to be her when I grow up. Yes, I know she died. Of course, I know she died. So did most of my other heroes, pretty much at this point. But yeah, so
Well, and then the other thing that you said that I said it a lot during COVID, and I am not, believe me, I'm not making light of COVID at all. It was, and still is, a very big thing. But my life really didn't change
not a
during
lot.
COVID.
No,
And I said to somebody once, and I don't remember who it was, but I said, if you're so afraid of dying that you stop living,
that's right.
then what's the point? I
That's
mean, we're all going to go at some point.
right.
And are you going to stop everything that you do in your life because you're so afraid of getting this thing and dying? But like with any kind of chronic thing or disease or anything like that, I mean, yes, we have to take the precautions. We need to do the things,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't be afraid of dying so much that we stop living.
Absolutely. And you and I might have talked about that on that walk because
Maybe.
same thing. I took it very seriously. I was going to protect others because if my part on this planet is to help others feel safe, then I'm going to do that regardless of what my personal beliefs for my own body are.
Mhm.
But I agree. It's like, and I was furious about what they were doing in assisted living facilities because I'm like, these people are a few steps away from that anyway, and you're going to take away every last ounce of joy and pleasure from them because their beloveds are too afraid to let them go. And so, that was it was very much my kind of like, oh my God. And that's when I told my mother, who didn't need to live with me yet, but now she does, for better or worse. I told her that. I'm like, if I can make sure you're not in one of those places, I'll do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen, because it was heartbreaking. To me, that was heartbreaking
Yeah.
for that very reason. I'm like, and none of them were given their own choice around it.
Yeah. Choices were made for them.
Yeah. And that, I won't get off on the tangent of
Right.
us growing
But
into
in
being
many ways,
elders.
like cancer is similar. Like, I get we need to do the treatments. You need to do what is best for you to live.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. But
Yep.
if you take all the joy out of your life and are just like living a miserable existence, then I don't want to say what's the point, but maybe we can all like look to find some kind of humor or joy in the
Right.
situation, which is
Well,
one of the reasons I do this podcast is I want to bring inspiration to people going through this, that like there is life on the other side.
mhm.
And yeah, while you may be in the muck right now, there's so much joy, waiting for you, and you can wait until you're all done to try and find joy again, or you can choose joy through the process. And joy and happiness aren't necessarily the
That's
same
right.
thing.
And awe, that's a whole other, like, I'm all about the awe this year. That's my own thing, but also great book out there that, scientifically looks at awe and like the 8 pathways to awe. And yeah, so that's,
Yeah,
and I
let's talk
agree. And
about let's talk
let's
about
talk
that a
about
little bit.
awe.
Let's talk
Uh,
a little bit about awe. So I guess kind of define awe as well as you can, because it's not, I mean, we say awesome, but awesome is like, oh, it's awesome. But like true awe, what does that mean to you?
and I don't have the book that I love that has all this research around awe is called Awe, and it's by
Okay.
a professor. I can't remember if he's at Berkeley or where he's at, but he's Dacher, and he's got a great TEDx on this too. And he pretty much fought death through an autoimmune disease and hospitalization and back out of it. So he's got his personal story around it. But Dacher, Dacher Keltner, I think I have it right, but he's got eight pathways to awe. And I don't know, for me, one of them is collective effervescence. And so that's like, and music, and those two together, like, so, hearing, no matter what your musical tastes or styles are, of course, sound, it has resonance and actually does shift our energy system. So you put that in a big group, a concert with somebody that you just are awe inspired by because of their beautiful talent and genius. Um, and you just, I can't explain it because it literally is like a feeling of energy rising
Okay.
through my body. And it's a feeling of knowing without question, without ego, without all the blah, blah, blah we've got in the us versus them out in the world of politics and everything else in society right now, but without a shadow of a doubt that we are connected to each other and to nature, because nature is also one of the 8 pathways to awe.
Take a walk outside.
Go walk outside, literally go hug a tree. I was just teaching on the symbiosis between koala animal, spiritual allies and their relationship with the trees they hang out in about 28 hours a day for koalas. And that just that way of nature to just take our ramped up energy and dispel it for us, and just diffuse it into something that's a little more light. Um, and a great word that is kind of synonymous with awe is numinosity or numinous, which is more like spiritual awe, like whatever your vision of the divine is, or connection to that is like. And that's the other thing that happened a lot during my journey through treatment, was like a very deep direct connection with the many facets and how I look at the divine, which isn't just one way. But Mother Mary was there with me, and Mary Magdalene, both sides, every time I was getting scanned, every day that I was in that radiation chamber, they were there.
Oh, I love that.
And to me, that is awe. Even
Absolutely.
though I was sitting in a radiation chamber. And then my ladies played the best music ever while I was in there. And I had a great time with them. Again, they were the coolest women. I said, hey, does this machine, whatever it's called, does it got a name? She's like, no. And I was like, I'm naming it Athena. So I christened the Advent Cancer Center's big radiation machine Athena.
Athena. I love it. I had a woman on that I interviewed that she was like terrified of the chemo drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And they have like the skull and crossbones and stuff on them and stuff. And so she had like either she did or somebody who came with her brought like heart stickers and had them put heart stickers on the bags. And she changed it from chemo drugs to liquid love. It was like, this is killing off the cancer cells. This is healing
Yeah.
me. It is liquid love. And just that little shift in consciousness can just change the whole game for
It
you.
does. So when I went, I didn't have to have chemo. I did the radiation 6 weeks daily. And for me, it was, I'm going to get my daily dose of sunshine.
There you go.
So that's exactly, how I approached it too. And again, it's not to bypass it. And it's also not to say, again, I'm on the health and wellness side. I'm very much a pragmatist. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the treatments because they're highly effective.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to play guessing games with supplements and things like that. However, I'm going to take all those supplements. I worked with a naturopath and many other alternative healers at the same time, so that my body could handle those things much more gracefully and without side effect. And that is pretty much how it was and is for me, because I am still taking tamoxifen right now, and debating on how long I'm going to do that for. And
and get professional guidance. Like, don't try
yeah,
and
please get
there are
off the
so many
interwebs.
supplements out there. And if you go on to we call it Dr. Google, like it's going to tell you everything and nothing, and it's going to scare the heck out of you. And like, work with a professional who understands these things, whether it's a medical professional or an alternative healer or whatever, but make sure it's somebody who knows what they're doing, so that you're not just going willy-nilly and could end up hurting yourself even more.
Right. And that people who did not just get their information from either on one side, big pharma, and on the other side, whatever big company selling the supplements. Because, hey, they make lots of money too. I mean, it's business.
Yes.
So I try to be very real with people about that too. I'm like, that's a multi-billion-dollar industry also.
Absolutely. And it's not regulated in any way. So who knows what
and there are no
is happening out
cure-alls.
there.
And, so when I hear such and such thing cures cancer, that immediately tells me that the person saying it knows nothing about cancer, because again, well, what organ, what it's, it all, nurse navigators, first thing they'll tell you is it behaves differently in every single body, because and I've just joked about with somebody that's going to run a lab test, because my tumor's still sitting in I said the petri dish, she joked it's in a freezer somewhere, but now that I'm almost to 4 years, they can, I didn't know this at the time, but they can actually inject those cells with estrogen to see how it behaves now.
Really?
yes, it's going to cost me a whole bunch of money. So I'm going to hold off, but it'll help me know, if I need to continue the drug protocol, if I feel comfortable based on the numbers that I want to pull off of it and that sort of thing, especially now that I'm pretty much postmenopausal. But I don't know where I was going with that, but it's like, hey, look, I'm the first one. Like, I love modern science on one hand, and yet I'm an herbalist.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe in the things we've worked with for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I'm certain I handled my radiation treatment because of all the not the psilocybin, but all the functional mushrooms that I took
Mm-hmm.
then and still take now.
Oh,
They,
mushrooms are huge, huge healers, and not
yeah,
the psychedelic ones. The
right.
just
Well,
the
they are too,
well, they are
but
too,
each
but
their own.
yeah, like the
That's a
ones that
whole other story.
that you like can cook and eat, kind of
Right.
thing.
Yes, I do a protocol of reishi, chaga, lion's mane. I think I'm missing cordyceps, and
Cordyceps.
that's very high quality ones that I get. But yeah, so anytime I hear, oh, such and such, this product is no to cure. Okay, yeah, let me see your research because
Yeah,
it's not, no,
right.
it's not how it works. There's no cure alls like that just across the board cure all
Yeah.
cancers.
Especially for something that reacts so differently in every organ, in every body. There's never going to be
Right,
one thing that's
right,
going to take care of it
right.
all. So Dina, what is one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who is like just starting on this cancer journey and is really kind of like, what is what is happening in my life? Where am I going with all of this? What is one piece of advice that you would give to somebody just starting?
Well, I think besides the obvious, like what we just talked about on the medical side, is use the resources offered to you, be informed. Knowledge is power. Nurse navigators are angels walking. I talk about souls that keep probably returning here to be angels. Well, you've met my nurse navigators, even though they weren't yours.
Mhm.
They're amazing human beings with so
And
much knowledge.
unfortunately, not all hospitals have them.
No,
That's
they
very
don't.
unfortunate.
And that's
Yeah.
why when people ask where should I go do my treatment, there are a couple different places that I mentioned, Adventist being and that was completely divinely guided that I even ended up there. Closest to my house, yes, but that was not the only reason. Um, and they also, of course, through at least my center, also offer social work and emotional therapeutic
Mhm.
care. To use the resources, us, those of us who've walked it, who, don't blow off the support groups that are offered. I think, well, and this goes for the spiritual part of the practice, the emotional and the physical is, we are in a society that praises do it all yourself individualism to the point of toxicity. So take the help that's offered, sit with yourself to know what it is you need, because that is often the hardest thing is people will ask you what do you need, and you just don't know, especially in
Mhm.
the early stages before the treatment start. Like, I won't know until I'm in it, kind of thing.
Right.
Right. So for me, I was actually very discerning about who I told, not because I was trying to keep secrets, but I didn't want toxic positivity, and I also didn't want gloom and doom. So I told the people who I knew could hold the energetic space of equanimity and balance, that resonates with me as a person. And same thing with my prayer warriors. I'm like, we're not just going to do whatever's for her highest good. Once I started, when I was going through different phases of the process, I'm like, okay, now you're praying that this test comes back negative. Like, I want that very specific prayer, or, this sort of thing. So I actually did have it's based on The Power of Eight, which is a book, but I have a friend who's part of a prayer group that does The Power of Eight sort of way of doing it. And so they were working my stuff in their very powerful prayer group without me even being there. So I had that happening. And it really is like, journal. Don't discount what you want and need. Say yes to those who are offering it. And I guess the other thing is, and this is true again for life, and a wise teacher who I can't remember right now once taught me, is when people offer help, say yes, because that's their soul trying to work their purpose.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
sometimes it's more selfish to say no to someone offering a help and generosity. than it is we think we're going to say no, we don't want to bother you, and da 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 da. And it's like they're there for to be your angels for a reason,
And they want to help. They
and
wouldn't
they want
ask
to
if
help.
they didn't want to help. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
So that I think is my biggest piece of wisdom, and just understand you're learning a new language. So if you don't understand it, don't be afraid to ask your professionals. Okay, I don't understand that. What do you mean? Explain it better.
Right. Awesome. All right. Well, where can people find you if people want to reach out, if people want to know more about what you do, or just want to talk to you more about your experience? How can people find you?
I think the best way is through where I write, which is, about whatever's coming up for me in the moment, but, and it'll be in the show notes, but, my writing page is mavens-nest.com.
Okay.
And then my website is, mavenandsageconsulting.com. And either way, you'll get through either message or email to me.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for this
Thank
today.
you.
This was so much fun.
Yes, it
And
was.
it's a very, this whole conversation was very different from what a lot of people think about when they're going through cancer. It's very like cut and dry, and these are the things that we're doing. And I love this little more metaphysical, spiritual kind of conversation because it's a huge piece that is often missed.
Yeah.
So I
It's what got me
appreciate all
through.
of your,
I mean, that I know for sure.
yeah, absolutely. All right.
Thank
Well, have
you.
a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for having
All
me. You
all
too.
right. Bye-bye.